Good evening, I'm Sarah Faris Club with the main news-making headlines around the world. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defence expresses appreciation to His Highness the Premier for honouring individuals that dedicated their lives for their beloved homeland. At least 6 people are killed in an Israeli missile explosion as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is due to expire in Gaza. Al-Maliki insists that the appointment of Al-Abadi to replace him as Iraq's Prime Minister violates the Constitution. And new clashes erupt between Syrian opposition and militants to control key cities and neighborhoods of Aleppo. We begin with the local news, where His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the Prime Minister Designate of the Republic of Iraq, Haider Al-Abadi, on his assignment to form a new government. In the cable, His Highness the Emir wished the newly appointed Premier success in honouring the aspirations of the Iraqi people, thus contributing to the unity and prosperity of the country. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah also sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the Iraqi Prime Minister Designate Haider Al-Abadi on his assignment to form a new government. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable of congratulations. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent today a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, on the occasion of winning the country's presidential election. His Highness the Emir extended his best wishes for Erdogan and the Turkish people and lauded the strong relations between the two countries. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on the occasion of winning the country's presidential election. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable of congratulations. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah received this morning at Sif Palace Acting Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince also received the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Interior and Acting Minister of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince then received the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defence, Sheikh Khalid Al-Jarrah Al-Sabah. The Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, received today a written message from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, that dealt with the existing bilateral relations between the two countries, as well as the latest regional and international developments. The message was delivered to the Acting Premier by the UAE Ambassador to the State of Kuwait, Rahma bin Hussein Al-Zabi. The meeting was also attended by the Acting Undersecretary of the Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Mohammed Ahmed Al-Mijrin Al-Rumi, Director of the Gulf Cooperation Council Affairs Department, Ambassador Nasser Haji Al-Mzain, Director of the Office of the First Deputy Premier and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Saleh Salim Al-Lughani, and other ministry officials. The Acting Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, also received the credentials of the newly appointed Ambassador of the Republic of Niger to the State of Kuwait, Abdou Boubakir. The meeting was attended by Acting Undersecretary of the Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Mohammed Ahmed Al-Mijrin Al-Rumi, Director of the Office of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister, Ambassador Saleh Salim Al-Lughani, and Acting Director of the Protocol Department, Advisor Nasser Abdurrahman Al-Mtiri. The acting Prime Minister and Foreign Minister then received the outgoing Ambassador of Hungary to the State of Kuwait, Shilag Ferns, on the occasion of ending his tenure to the country. The meeting was attended by the Director of the Office of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister, Ambassador Saleh Salem Al-Loghani, and other senior ministry officials. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defense, Sheikh Khalid Al-Jarrah Al-Sabah, received this morning at his office a senior-level American delegation where they held talks on a number of issues of common concern, particularly in the military field, as well as bilateral relations and means of boosting them. The meeting was attended by the Army's Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Abdulrahman Mohammed Al-Uthman, and his Deputy Lieutenant General Mohammed Khalid Al-Khidr. Under the patronage of the Deputy Premier and Minister of Defense, Sheikh Khalid Al-Jarrah Al-Sabah, a ceremony was held in which the premises of the Military Facilities Engineering, located in Hawali area, was named after the late Sheikh Sabah Al-Nasser Al-Sabah, former Undersecretary of the Ministry of Defense, in recognition of the significant role he played in serving the country. Upon arrival at the ceremony, Sheikh Khalid Al-Jarrah was received by the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Defense, Jasir Abdul Razzaq Al-Jassar, and the Ministry's Assistant Undersecretary for Information Systems, Ahmed Khalid Al-Irada. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defense expressed gratitude and appreciation to His Highness Sheikh Jabir Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, for this generous gesture that honored those individuals who dedicated their lives in serving their beloved homeland, and wished Kuwait further prosperity under the wise leadership of His Highness the Emir and Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Jabir Al-Sabah, and His Highness Sheikh the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jabir Al-Sabah. A journalist and a freelance Palestinian translator assisting him were killed in an ordnance explosion today while working on an assignment about the aftermath of the recent war in the Gaza Strip. Police said that 3 police engineers were also killed in the attack, while 4 others were badly injured. The explosion came as a temporary ceasefire was due to expire today, while indirect talks between Israeli and Palestinian officials aimed at agreeing on a more lasting end to hostilities were expected to continue in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Our correspondent in Gaza, Majd Al-Wahidi, has more details in the following report.
Today is the 3rd and final day of the ceasefire in Gaza. It comes amid intense Egyptian efforts to end a bloody conflict and reach a resolution between Israeli and Palestinian negotiators. While some sources reveal that 6 points have been agreed upon on the negotiation table, some gaps are still wide open. Israeli conditions are centered around the demilitarization of Gaza, which is not an easy task, especially for Palestinian resistance factions.
The Israelis try to raise some requested issue which is not accepted from the Palestinians, such as disarming the power, the forces of military wings. And the resistance group consider it's very important for them, and it's very strong paper to use for facing Israeli occupation and facing the collective punishment, which is the siege.
The deadline is soon, and the clock is ticking towards the end of the 72-hour truce. By that time, the negotiators must either agree on a permanent truce, accept an extension, or risk a resumption of more than a month of a relentless war. In the middle of these 3 options is Gaza's war-hit population, which is wondering what future holds for them. Almost 250,000 displaced people have sought refuge in UN-run schools and other shelters.
No place is safe in Gaza, but we have no options. The peoples of Gaza has no options because there is no places. They will continue to be at UNRWA school, and we have no options also, so we are continue opening our school to shelter them.
Israel's war on Gaza has not only left thousands of families homeless, but an entire damaged infrastructure. Gaza is now full of destroyed houses, mosques, schools, streets, and other civilian establishments. However, the war is not over yet, and with no signs of a lasting ceasefire, the present is still full of questions with an uncertain destiny. Experts suggest that billions of dollars are needed to reconstruct Gaza as soon as possible. Yet others believe that the only thing that is needed to be reconstructed right now are the humans of Gaza, their mental health and well-being as a people. Majd Al-Wahidi, Kuwait TV, Gaza.
Iraq's embattled Premier Nouri al-Maliki said today that the appointment of Haider al-Abadi to replace him as Prime Minister violated the constitution and had no value. In a televised speech, al-Maliki said everyone should accept a pending federal court ruling on an objection he filed against al-Abadi's government, adding that his government would continue until a final decision was made. Al-Abadi won swift endorsements from the United States and Iran yesterday as he called on political leaders to end feuds that have allowed militants to seize a third of the country. Earlier in the day, the country's state television reported that Al-Abadi was working on forming a new cabinet and developing a government program in agreement with other political blocs. Meanwhile, hundreds of people took to the streets in the Iraqi capital Baghdad to show support and solidarity with the embattled incumbent Prime Minister al-Maliki. Also in Iraq, police said that a car bomb exploded today in Baghdad's Ba'iyya district, killing at least 2 people and wounding 11 others. Today's incident came after at least 8 people were killed overnight in a car bombing in Nikarada district, while another bomb attack was reported in the neighborhood of Zafaraniye, in which 4 people were killed and 13 injured. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel announced that another 130 U.S. troops have arrived in Iraq on what the Pentagon described as a temporary mission to access the scope of the humanitarian crisis facing thousands of displaced Iraqi civilians trapped on Sinjar Mountain and to evaluate options for getting them out to safety.
I recommended to the President, and the President has authorized me to go ahead and send about 130 new assessment team members up to northern Iraq in the Erbil area to take a closer look and give a more in-depth assessment of where we can continue to help the Iraqis with what they're doing and the threats that they are now dealing with. Those new assessment team members arrived in their Erbil area today. They'll be working with General Austin, who I spoke with yesterday on this, and General Dempsey, and getting those assessments back to us very shortly.
Moving to Syria, where rebels have captured 2 key towns and several villages near the country's northern border with Turkey after pushing out rival fighters in fierce clashes. The Syrian militants said they captured the towns of Akhtarin and Turkmenbareh after fierce clashes with opposition rivals who were fighting to topple Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The militants also took a string of nearby villages over which they had been fighting, including Masudiye, Dabiq, and Ghoz. Opposition groups and activists have also said the towns located in Aleppo province are the latest prize for militants who have carved out a self-styled caliphate across vast swaths of both Syria and Iraq. As authorities geared up for protest marches against Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's government scheduled for tomorrow, security forces have shipped containers to block roads leading to central Islamabad, hoping to halt the protesters. The protests represent the strongest challenge yet to Sharif's government just a year after he took office in the first democratic transfer of power in a country long plagued by military coups. Opposition leader Imran Khan and scholar Tahir al-Qudri have both planned demonstrations in Islamabad on Pakistan's Independence Day. Both men want the government to step down and for new elections to be held. Over to Europe, Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk called on the International Red Cross to help in delivering Russian aid to parts of eastern Ukraine. A convoy of 280 Russian trucks, reportedly packed with aid, rumbled towards the border with Ukraine yesterday, but Kiev said the goods would only be allowed in if they were inspected by the International Red Cross itself. The tug-of-war over humanitarian aid to Ukraine's rebel-held eastern regions reflected deeper issues than just the need for food, water, and shelter in a war-racked zone where buildings are being hit daily by rockets. Although all sides agree that the aid is sorely needed, Ukraine and the West fear that Russia could use the move as a cover for sending troops into the separatist-held territory. NATO has also warned about the risk of intervention, citing thousands of combat-ready Russian troops along the Ukrainian border. Officials from the African Union and the World Health Organization, or the WHO, spoke today in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa about the Ebola virus outbreak in West Africa. As the death toll from the outbreak in West Africa climbed to over 1,000, the WHO said the use of experimental treatments was ethical. The WHO representative to Ethiopia added that the organization will be working with the African Union in supporting all African countries to face this new challenge for the whole continent. Meanwhile, health authorities in Taiwan have conducted an exercise in the event a traveler infected with Ebola arrives in the country, announcing that it had set up a special task force to handle a possible outbreak of the virus. The Ebola epidemic is the worst case so far in history, and the WHO has declared an international health emergency meeting earlier this week. Finally, moving to the local financial news, for the second day in a row, the three main indices of the Kuwait Stock Exchange were positive by the end of the trading session, with the price index gaining 11.18 points to settle at 7,245.71 points. The KSX 15 index also increased by 8.65 points to register at 1,204.33 points, while the weighted index rose 2.24 points to close at 488.86 points. The share of the Coast Investment and Development Company was the top gainer of the day, while that of the Securities Group Company suffered the biggest loss by the end of the session. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News to see our daily news bulletin again, including all of our reports, or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOI Kuwait News. Now to recap the headlines for the day. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Defense expresses appreciation to His Highness the Prime Minister for honoring individuals that dedicated their lives for their beloved homeland. At least 6 people are killed in an Israeli missile explosion as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is due to expire. Al-Maliki insists that the appointment of Al-Abadi to replace him as Iraq's Prime Minister violates the Constitution. And new clashes erupt between Syrian opposition and militants to control key cities and neighborhoods of Aleppo.